What happens when Hollywood stops pretending and starts remembering? Every decade, a few combat films refuse the glamour and dive straight into the grit. They rebuild the past, not with imagination, but with evidence diaries, mission logs, and eyewitnesses who were there. These aren't war fantasies, they're time machines. Some left historians speechless. Others made veterans whisper, "That's exactly how it felt." So buckle up because what you're about to see blurs the line between cinema and history itself. Number 12. Tora, 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 1970. This wasn't just another Pearl Harbor movie, it was a historical collaboration that rewrote how war could be filmed. When Tora, Tora, Tora hit screens in 1970, it stunned historians because it wasn't told from one side. American and Japanese filmmakers worked together using both nations' military archives, flight logs, and eyewitness reports to rebuild the attack on Pearl Harbor frame by frame. Every explosion, every flight path, every radar miscommunication was pulled straight from declassified documents. Director Richard Fleischer even insisted on using real aircraft restored from World War II instead of models. The Japanese crew, led by Toshio Masuda and Kinji Fukasaku, mirrored the same attention to detail down to the exact naval commands spoken during the attack. What made historians truly pause was how the film avoided blame. It showed both sides operating under duty, not villainy. That honesty made it unsettlingly real. The battle choreography was so exact that actual pilots from the war were brought in to verify timing and formation accuracy. When the movie premiered, it didn't just entertain, it educated. Military historians called it a live-action textbook. No slow-motion heroics, no patriotic speeches, just a meticulous reconstruction of a morning that changed the world forever. Tora, Tora, Tora didn't dramatize history. It repeated it. Number 11. Das Boot, 1981. You can almost smell the metal and diesel. Das Boot didn't show heroism, it showed claustrophobia. Directed by Wolfgang Petersen, this German masterpiece from 1981 recreated submarine warfare so accurately that actual Navy veterans felt uncomfortable watching it. Petersen didn't rely on set pieces. He built a full-scale replica of a Type 7 U-boat, then trapped his cast inside it for months. The result? Real sweat, real panic, and camera movements that felt alive. Every sound from the creak of pressure valves to the sonar pings came from actual submarine recordings. Petersen even flooded the set during scenes to simulate leaks, forcing the actors to respond in real time. No acting, just instinct. The lighting came from the same low-watt bulbs used during World War II patrols, making the cast's exhaustion painfully authentic. Historians praise Das Boot for one rare reason: accuracy through emotion. It captured what? Submarine duty truly meant endless boredom broken by seconds of terror. There's no music cue to save you, no big victory, just silence, depth, and fear. When German veterans screened it, they called it the closest thing to reliving the patrols. That was both a compliment and a warning. Few films dared to be that honest. Das Boot didn't glorify survival, it showed how survival could feel like punishment. Number 10. Letters from Iwo Jima, 2006. Clint Eastwood did something few American directors ever tried. He told the story from the other side. Letters from Iwo Jima, released in 2006, flipped the narrative of its companion film, Flags of Our Fathers. Instead of focusing on American soldiers, it entered the hearts and trenches of the Japanese defenders of Iwo Jima. The film was based on real letters found buried in the island, written by the men who never came home. Every uniform, trench, and tunnel was built using historical blueprints. Eastwood's crew studied photographs, terrain maps, and diaries to reconstruct the underground defenses exactly as they were in 1945. Even the dialogue was written in period-correct Japanese, with military linguists overseeing every line. What made historians nod in respect wasn't just accuracy, it was empathy. The film didn't rely on stereotypes. It revealed fear, confusion, and sacrifice in soldiers usually portrayed as faceless enemies. Veterans from both nations later remarked how eerily truthful it felt, not for its visuals, but for its emotion. It mirrored their memories of exhaustion, hopelessness, and honor under pressure. Historians called it one of the few war films that respected every uniform. Letters from Iwo Jima proved that realism isn't just about the details, it's about the humanity behind them. Number 9. Paths of Glory, 1957. Stanley Kubrick didn't just make a film about World War I, he made a statement about the absurdity of it. Paths of Glory, 1957, was filmed in black and white, but its truth was anything but faded. Kubrick's attention to authenticity bordered on obsession. He rebuilt trench systems based on original French military blueprints and used real mud, not studio slurry, to get the weight of every soldier's step right. The camera work made history. The famous tracking shot following Kirk Douglas through the trenches wasn't cinematic showmanship, it was documentary precision. Kubrick measured the real distances soldiers would have marched under fire and recreated them step for step. The result felt more like being in the trenches than watching them. Historians have long praised Paths of Glory for its emotional realism. It didn't just depict the battle, it showed the human bureaucracy that followed it, the orders, the confusion, the injustice. French authorities initially banned the film, claiming it was too real. Veterans said it hit too close to home. In the end, Paths of Glory remains one of the few combat films that historians treat as both evidence and art. It doesn't show glory, it shows how glory fades the moment the shooting stops. Kubrick captured not the war, but what war does to those forced to fight it. Number 8. Platoon, 1986. Oliver Stone didn't research Platoon, he lived it. Released in 1986, Platoon was drawn straight from Stone's own experiences as a U.S. infantryman in Vietnam. That's why historians and veterans immediately recognized its brutal honesty. There were no polished heroes, just young men barely holding it together. Before filming, Stone sent the entire cast into a grueling 2-week boot camp in the Philippines. They slept in the jungle, ate ration packs, and lived without contact from the outside world. The goal was simple: break them down, then make them rely on each other. What happened next was method acting turned reality. By the time cameras rolled, the actors moved and talked like real platoon members. The film's structure mirrored the emotional descent of a real tour, from confusion to exhaustion to numbness. The camera never glorified the chaos, it documented it. Critics noticed. Historians praised how it captured the fragmented psychology of modern warfare, the shifting loyalties, and the moral exhaustion. Veterans of the conflict called it the first film that got the faces right. No speeches, no flags, just the raw pulse of fear and survival. Platoon didn't just win Oscars, it won the respect of those who'd been there. That's a kind of accuracy no textbook can replicate. Number 7. Full Metal Jacket, 1987. Stanley Kubrick didn't just film Full Metal Jacket, he engineered it. Released in 1987, this movie turned boot camp into psychological warfare. Kubrick didn't hire actors to play Marines, he turned them into Marines. He brought in real drill instructor R. Lee Ermey, a former U.S. Marine who improvised most of his iconic lines on set. Those scenes weren't rehearsed insults, they were lightning bolts of authenticity that made audiences feel trapped in the same barracks. Kubrick shot the Vietnam battle scenes not in Asia, but in an abandoned industrial area of London. He covered the entire set with imported palm trees, rubble, and sandbags, matching the topography of Hue City using U.S. Marine maps. Even the graffiti on the walls came from photographs taken during the real siege. What made historians call it too real wasn't the firefights, it was the transformation. The movie's first half shows how training breaks down identity. The second half shows what's left when that identity is gone. Every uniform stain, every chant, every stare into the camera was deliberate. Veterans praised how Full Metal Jacket captured the emotional distance, soldiers carried the humor, the silence, the confusion. Kubrick's obsession with accuracy went beyond costumes. It was in the psychology. He wanted the audience to feel trained, stripped, and deployed, all without leaving their seats. When it ended, people didn't clap. They sat still. Because for once, a film had shown not the war outside, but the war inside. Number 6. Generation Kill, 2008. Some combat stories need more than 2 hours, they need the weight of a series. HBO's Generation Kill, released in 2008, brought viewers into the 2003 Iraq invasion with precision only a journalist could deliver. Based on Rolling Stone reporter Evan Wright's first-hand account, the series used his real field notes, radio transcripts, and interviews to recreate 7 intense weeks inside a Marine reconnaissance unit. The show's realism was surgical. The dialogue wasn't scripted to sound cinematic, it came from real soldier speech patterns, complete with interruptions, slang, and silence. The actors trained alongside actual Marines, learning how to move as a unit and communicate under stress. Even the vehicles, call signs, and checkpoints were identical to those in the original reports. What impressed historians most was its restraint. Generation Kill didn't try to dramatize combat, it showed the confusion, the boredom, and the tiny moral choices that defined each day. Directors refused to add background music or slow-motion effects. Instead, they left the scenes to breathe, just as they happened. Viewers felt the heat, the frustration, and the raw humanity of real soldiers caught between orders and conscience. Military historians hailed it as a time capsule of modern warfare. It didn't exaggerate. It didn't preach. It just recorded. Generation Kill proved that the truth doesn't need cinematic tricks, it just needs courage to show how things really were, no matter how uncomfortable that reality becomes. Number 5. The Thin Red Line, 1998. Terrence Malick doesn't film battles, he films souls in chaos. 1998's The Thin Red Line reimagined the Battle of Guadalcanal with a kind of beauty that hid deep historical precision. Malick's team studied official military records and diaries from soldiers who fought there, then shot on actual Pacific Island terrain that matched the conditions of 1942. Every maneuver, every topographical detail came from U.S. Army maps. Even the heat and humidity were real. Malick refused artificial fog or lighting, relying entirely on natural elements. Actors trained with military advisors and lived together in isolation to mirror the exhaustion of real deployment. The director even kept them separated from outsiders to maintain their mental disconnection from the world. Historians admired how The Thin Red Line captured not just the tactics, but the psychology, the quiet between the firefights, the moral weight of every decision. The camera lingered on faces, grass, and sky the same way. A soldier's mind might drift while waiting for orders. The result was haunting. Critics called it poetic realism. Veterans called it too familiar. It felt like a dream of a memory, painful and personal. Malick didn't chase drama. He captured dissonance, the way nature and humanity collide in war. The Thin Red Line didn't shout for attention. It whispered truths only the survivors recognized. It's a film that historians still debate, not for what it shows, but for how quietly it shows everything. Number 4. Come and See, 1985. Few films in history have left audiences this shaken. Come and See, directed by Elim Klimov in 1985, is often described as the most realistic depiction of World War II's Eastern Front, and it's not hard to see why. Klimov didn't want actors pretending to be traumatized. He wanted truth, so he cast real villagers from Belarus, shot in the actual regions that saw Nazi occupation, and used minimal makeup or effects. The mud, the ruins, the fear, all were real. To capture authenticity, Klimov shot the film sequentially, meaning the young lead actor, Alexei Kravchenko, experienced the story's psychological descent in real time. His physical and emotional changes weren't acting, they were transformation caught on camera. The production used live ammunition for some scenes, and almost unheard-of practice even then, to mimic the sound and tension of real firefights. Every shot, every scream came from historical testimonies and survivor accounts. Historians called Come and See a document, not a film. It showed not the glory of resistance, but the nightmare of survival. There were no heroes here, only witnesses. When the film was screened for veterans, many couldn't finish it. Not because it was violent, but because it was true. Klimov didn't stage emotion. He documented human collapse and endurance in its rawest form. Come and See didn't ask to be understood. It demanded to be felt and remembered. Number 3. The Killing Fields, 1984. Some war stories aren't fought on battlefields but inside memories. The Killing Fields, released in 1984, told the true story of Cambodian journalist Dieth Pran and reporter Sidney Schanberg trapped amid the Khmer Rouge's regime. Director Roland Joffé built every frame on survivor testimony and real journalistic notes smuggled out of Cambodia. Instead of sets, Joffé filmed in Thailand near the Cambodian border, using villages that mirrored the real locations where the story unfolded. The film's extras included refugees who had actually fled the conflict. Their reactions weren't rehearsed, they were lived. Historians applauded the film's accuracy in capturing the confusion of journalists covering war, the tension between truth and survival. Joffé's team refused to sensationalize. They relied on natural lighting, minimal soundtracks, and a focus on realism over spectacle. Actor Haing S. Ngor, who portrayed Dieth Pran, wasn't a professional, he was a real survivor. He had lived through the horrors the film depicted, and that authenticity electrified every scene. Critics and historians alike called it one of the most powerful examples of realism ever captured on screen. The Killing Fields didn't just tell a true story, it was one. Every pause, every tear, every quiet look across the camera was real human memory resurfacing. It reminded viewers that some wars never end. They just move inside the people who lived them. Number 2. Band of Brothers, 2001. Before streaming became the norm, Band of Brothers showed what cinematic realism could look like on television. Released in 2001, this 10-part HBO series produced by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks wasn't based on imagination. It was built directly from the testimonies of the real Easy Company, the paratroopers of the 506th Regiment who fought from Normandy to Germany. Every scene began with research. The production team used veterans' letters, maps, and after-action reports to design each episode. Uniforms were hand-sewn to match wartime materials, and the helmets even carried the same scuff patterns found in archived photos. The weapons, vehicles, and parachute drills were handled under the supervision of real military advisors, some of them actual World War II veterans. The actors didn't just rehearse, they lived as soldiers. They spent weeks in a brutal training camp, sleeping in mud, marching in rain, and building trust the same way Easy Company had. When they filmed the snowbound Battle of Bastogne, they shivered in real cold under simulated artillery barrages that left even the camera crew rattled. Historians praised Band of Brothers for doing something few war stories ever manage, balancing accuracy with empathy. It didn't romanticize bravery, it humanized it. The show captured not only the tactics and missions, but the small moments, letters home, fear before dawn, and the silence after loss. When the surviving veterans watched the premiere, some wept quietly. One of them said, "It felt like we were back there." That's the kind of authenticity no CGI can replicate. Number 1. All Quiet on the Western Front, 2022. You've seen many war films, but All Quiet on the Western Front isn't just another retelling, it's a brutal mirror. Released in 2022, this German adaptation of Erich Maria Remarque's classic novel stunned historians for its precision and emotional weight. Director Edward Berger didn't stage grand battles. He recreated the slow disintegration of hope. The production built actual trench networks in the Czech countryside, mapped from World War I blueprints and satellite references. The crew studied period photographs and museum collections to match every uniform, insignia, and piece of equipment. The cinematography avoided gloss natural light, cold tones, and mud that clung to everything. Every explosion was practical, every expression unforced. Actors were directed to endure physical fatigue instead of performing it. Their uniforms stayed soaked for days, their faces streaked with real grime. Even the food they ate on camera was historically accurate. The sound design went through hundreds of field recordings to capture the hollow boom of distant artillery exactly as it would have echoed across Flanders. Historians applauded its refusal to dramatize. Instead, it showed the machinery of war grinding down the human spirit with methodical realism. There are no speeches, no victories, just the crushing silence between orders. When veterans' families and historians watched it, they agreed. It may be the most faithful recreation of trench warfare ever put on screen. All Quiet on the Western Front doesn't tell you how war looks, it makes you feel how it never ends. And there you have it, 12 films that dared to make history feel real again. They didn't rely on spectacle or myth. They used sweat, silence, and precision to remind us what authenticity truly means. Maybe that's why these stories linger long after the credits roll. So which one hit you hardest? Was it the claustrophobic tension of Das Boot or the haunting beauty of All Quiet on the Western Front? Tell us below, share this with a friend, and remember sometimes truth makes the best cinema of all.